Hello, BookTube. After great delay, I think I'm going to start our 7.7K Q&A answers. This channel recently reached 7.7K subscribers, and I put out a call for questions, and I once again got bombarded with great questions. Haven't really felt quite up to a marathon answer session until now, but now I'm going to dive into these things. Before we get to 7.8K, I'm going to see how many of them I can do in 30 minutes. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time about the light. I didn't think I was going to have to apologize for that because the weather forecasts for Boston for today were 100% guaranteeing a day of downpouring rain. So of course it's bright and hot and humid and sunny like the middle of summer because weather forecasts are worthless. Weather data is the only thing to pay attention to. Weather forecasts are done for ratings. But let's see how many of these questions we can get to before I run out of steam. We'll look at 30 minutes as a stopping point. So let's see. We'll start off with Connor, who says, since the Supreme Court is in the news, can you make a Supreme Court starter kit? Yes, the Supreme Court here in the United States is very much in the news because the Republican Senate refused to even contemplate, they refused to even vet the Supreme Court nominee that was put forward by President Barack Obama because he was black, because President Obama was black, and said that it couldn't be done because it was too close to an election. And a whole bunch of prominent figures in the Republican Senate went on record and said, no, I believe this is a principled matter. It has nothing to do with the president. It has to do with the timing. You can't put forward a Supreme Court justice this close to an election. The people, the Supreme Court justice choice is a direct exponent of the person who's in the Oval Office, and that person may be out of office in a month, and it's a permanent job. So you can't do it this close to an election. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg died when so close to the election that voting is already taking place. We're long past the cutoff point here. The election is underway. People are currently voting. And the Republicans, in my opinion, made an enormous tactical mistake. They're just counting on it not mattering. They're counting on never being out of power again, which is to put forward a nominee for the Supreme Court while Ruth Bader Ginsburg's body was still warm, with mere weeks to the election, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that none of these people are men or women of their word. None of them are. They are liars. So, and that the important thing to remember here on the subject is that does not just apply to nominating a Supreme Court justice. That is a tag. It's either a description of you or it's not. And now it is a description of every single one of these people. They are liars. You can't believe anything they say. You must operate under the assumption that everything they say is a lie, because they are as flagrant an example of a hypocrite in American public life as American public life has ever provided. No, we absolutely cannot do this. It's too close to an election. The people have to decide. The election is actually underway, but we've decided we can do it this time. All for one purpose, all for one goal, which is to reduce women in this country to second-class citizens. It's not just Roe v. Wade that the core of this ideology is after. It's women's rights in general. It's the amendment that allowed them to vote. It's the whole of it. It's not just abortion. That is just the toe in the door. But all for that. They've agreed to sacrifice any hint of their good name. Their good name is now gone. So no matter what Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz or anybody else, no matter what they try to do in public life from here on out, they are liars. So Lindsey Graham comes to give the commencement address at your school. It'll be Lindsey Graham, comma, former, whatever, present, whatever. But the only word that belongs after that comma is the word liar. He's a liar. And so are they all. So, but a Supreme Court starter kit, you shouldn't get me started on the idea. I would happily do it, but I have been a Supreme Court fan for a long time and have studied it deeply. And I've read lots of biographies and of all of the court justices. So I could do it, but it would be extremely tedious, even by the standards of this channel. Jack Hanlon says, is there an origin story to the name of your home? My surly houseboy came up with it and thought that it was sufficiently ironic. Jonathan Noel says, what do you make of JK Rowling these days? JK Rowling, the infamous TERF. The main thing that I make about JK Rowling these days is that she really ought to stay off of social media. Just nuke your accounts. Just nuke her account. Don't just stop tweeting and posting, but erase the account. Just get off social media. That's all. That would be my main piece of advice. Chapter 21 says, any ideas of writing NaNoWriMo yet? Preptober is almost upon us. Yes, it is. It is. Preptober starts tomorrow. Horror of horrors. And of course today I still have no idea what I'm going to be prepping in October. None whatsoever. Now, the downside of that is that I have some feverish planning to do. I have to figure out what I'm going to write in order to make the most of Preptober. The upside is that if I haven't figured out what project I'm doing, you don't have to quite yet. Once I've figured out, your time is up. But if I'm dithering, then you get to dither at least one more day. But tomorrow we all have to know, at least provisionally. I mean, you can do Preptober and then change your mind on what your project's going to be. But this dithering has to stop. So I haven't figured out yet what I'm going to do. I have a million ideas, of course, but I've been sort of sidetracked in the last week. But I haven't figured out what I'm going to do, but I really need to by tomorrow. And we'll do a video about Preptober either later today or tomorrow to get us all on the same page. Inspiring Words says, do you have any opinions about or experience of depression? I don't have any experience with it myself, no. And I used to have opinions about it that did me no credit. I used to have the typical opinions that you find among people who have not educated themselves on the subject. People who say, oh, just snap out of it. Oh, you're having a bad day. Oh, you're just in a mood. Which I believe is true for a large number of people who are given a quick quack diagnosis of depression. I think that depression is widely overdiagnosed. But in the intervening years between when I've had those earlier facile opinions and now, I've had experience with people who actually do experience genuine clinical depression, and it is definitely real, and it is not a mood at all. It is not a matter of mood. It's a matter of brain chemistry. I've seen these people. The furthest thing in the world, the conception of it that I used to have was whining loiterers who just say, oh, I'm depressed, I can't get out of bed, when really what they are is just pampered. And until I saw enough people who definitely aren't like that and still had this happen, this cloud, this weather system, just sort of settle in on the sunny valley of their life, and they have not much more ability to affect how they react than we have the ability to affect that weather when it happens in real life. So now I have a lot of respect, a lot of compassion for people who actually do suffer from clinical depression. I still think it's drastically overdiagnosed. And I still think that most of the people that I meet, especially young people, especially 21st century people, who say that they're depressed are not actually depressed. But my respect for the people who shoulder this burden and go on is enormous. The Abiding Badger says, why do you think that Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, just to name a few SF series, have absolutely gone down the toilet? Well, I know what the commentary, the BroTube alt-right commentariat on YouTube would say, that the reason why all those things have gone downhill is because of SJWs, social justice warriors, because of the importation, the artificial imposition of extreme left-wing politics that is designed by a colonizing group of interlopers to debase the sci-fi property in question, strip it away from its toxic male fans, and then once they're done doing that, move on, because they themselves are not fans of the properties. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. And it's not just science fiction series, it's also infamously comic books, where interlopers come on board. They don't know anything about the properties that they're being given the rights to write, or to, in this case, to produce, or anything like that. They don't know anything about what science fiction nerds call the lore. They vandalize it, and then when the reaction is universally negative, they say, oh well, lols, and they move on. leaving the wreckage behind. I'm not quite sure that that was true with J.J. Abrams in the Abrams-verse Star Trek movies. They were still vandalism, but I don't think they were vandalism in quite the same way. They were just, he's just a nincompoop, that's all. He's not a vandal, and he probably does care about some things, whereas the real blue-haired, shaved side of the head, blue checkmark on Twitter, arch SJWs don't actually care about anything. None of these properties mean anything to them. They've long since hollowed those feelings out of themselves. That certainly is true of Star Trek Discovery, the infamous Star Trek example of this kind of, what did you put it? Going down the toilet. Because Star Trek Discovery is 100% entirely that. 100% entirely just a ruined, despoiled, and vandalized property that was destroyed by interlopers who don't know it and don't care about it, in order to make social points. I don't need social advice from blue checkmark 20-year-olds. But nevertheless, Star Trek Discovery, you would be hard-pressed to think of a Star Trek incarnation that is less Star Trek than this. All the technology looks wrong. The film art, the sets are all ugly, horrible. The humor is throwaway and dumb. There's no internal consistency with any of the lore of any version of Star Trek, whether it's Gene Roddenberry or the Abrams-verse. The acting is terrible, and the main character is the ultimate Mary Sue, which is an old science fiction formulation that says a young female character who comes into an established universe or storyline and is effortlessly better than any of the established characters at everything. Solves all the problems, and is only ever thwarted by people who aren't able to perceive the full depth of her wisdom. Science fiction communities have been mocking Mary Sue's forever, and lately, in the last 5 or 6 years, the alt-right commentariat on YouTube has pointed out that the Mary Sue character is pretty much the only kind of character that SJW progressives know how to create, because it's how they view themselves. And everything about their world is solipsistic. They are the center of everything. So if you're reading a book that has all the brilliance, the literary brilliance of Tolstoy, and there is no character who actually has your name and your job, then it's bad, because you're not represented in it. And that's the yardstick that you have to use. Well, am I represented in here? I'm not going to like this or champion it or talk about it or care about it unless I look into it and see myself. I have to see myself in this. And I obviously can't be a villain. So it has, not only do I have to see myself, but myself has to be the hero. Hence the prevalence of Mary Sue's, like, for instance, the character Rey in the new Star Wars movies. Someone who is effortlessly better than everyone at everything, who, without any explanation of where that superiority comes from. Someone whose sole isolated superiority in everything is the linchpin around which everything around her that had any kind of long-standing roots is destroyed. I was a little ambivalent about the character of Rey in the new Star Wars movies, because I think Daisy Ridley is incredibly talented. And so her Rey was always pleasant to watch on the screen, even when I was thinking, okay, well, how would you even know how to do this? Where are you getting these powers from? Et cetera, et cetera. Star Trek Discovery was much worse than that, because Michael Burnham, the character of Michael Burnham, was made specifically tailor-engineered to annoy old school fans. The character was made to do that. It's not that the character had that effect and then the showrunners rallied around her. It's that she was created to do that. People sat at a table at Paramount and actually said out loud, well, we know who these people are that we want to cheese off. What kind of character can we make that will do that most efficiently? How can we most assuredly do that? We don't care about ratings, and we certainly don't care about Star Trek. We only care about cheesing off these people that we've decided are Nazis, non-persons, on the wrong side of history. So what do we need to do that? She has to be omnicompetent. She has to be better at everything than everybody, and sort of pityingly condescending towards other people. I'm not the chief science officer on the ship. You are. But, you know, I still have the answers a good half hour before you do, and it's all right that you don't, because you're a man. Let's give her a male name. Let's give her vaguely androgynous look. Let's make sure that every decision of hers ends up being correct down the line, no matter how bad it looks at first. So that infamously, we no sooner meet Michael Burnham than she commits mutiny and assault on her captain. We're now 3 years in, three seasons into the show. She's still a character. She's still a character. When in either Star Trek universe, Roddenberry's or the Abrams verse, a character who committed mutiny on the bridge of a starship and assaulted her character, in this case nerve pinching the captain into unconsciousness, would have faced a firing squad and would not be alive in the 3rd season of the show. And the infamous example of this in Doctor Who is that when Peter Capaldi left the show, the 13th Doctor was a woman. Which is a decision that I myself don't much care about. I don't much mind that. I would have preferred a slightly more talented actress. Not more talented, because the actress Jodie Whittaker is a very talented actress, but she is not right for the part. There is such a thing as miscasting. Not to mention the fact that Peter Capaldi was a classically trained stage actor, and so his Scottish accent was not a problem. Whereas Jodie Whittaker, there are huge numbers of scenes in her run as the 13th Doctor where her accent makes her incomprehensible, unless you were born a house or two away from her. I've listened to many regional accents across many different time zones in many different decades, and there are large parts of what she says that I have to rely on the text translation at the bottom of the screen, or I wouldn't know what she was saying. And that's something that a showrunner, the director on right there on the set could fix. But the director can't do that. There is no such thing here as constructive criticism. There is no such thing as, okay, you want to do that line again, only enunciate. You went to theater school, so your accent is overpowering your dialogue here, and half the people who are listening here on the soundstage didn't understand you. So can we do that again? You can't. No director can do that anymore. But I wouldn't have so much minded, except for the infamous, cardinal sin of the 13th Doctor, which is one particular episode that retconned the entire history of Doctor Who. You don't get to do that. This character and that history is not yours to do that with. You can add to it, but you can't subtract from it. And there's one infamous episode, Whovians will know what I'm talking about, that was the line in the sand. If you follow the show after that episode, then you don't much care about the lore of the show. And I don't know what that says about your status as a fan. I watched that episode and thought, okay, well, whatever follows from this, if this is considered canon, then whatever follows from this episode is no longer Doctor Who. And that appears to be the case. So I don't know what I don't know what to say about why they've gone down the toilet. I would tend to agree that they have. Most episodes of the new the 13th Doctor I have found are not particularly enjoyable. They have a hectoring kind of Twitter lecture tone to them. Star Trek Discovery is unwatchable. It's unwatchably bad. And what was the other one here? Star Wars. Well, visually, the new Star Wars movies are terrific, but they don't make a lick of sense. Not from scene to scene. Not from moment to moment. They don't. The one diversion here that I have from the alt-right bro-tubes YouTube channels that scream about everything that has to do with anything. If you merely have to say the word woman. That's all. And each one of them will grift 10 videos for their followers out of it all with 10 ad breaks in between. So they're not any kind of model of admirability. But the one place that I really diverge from them, I largely agree with their broader criticisms of Star Trek Discovery or the 13th Doctor or Star Wars. But the one place where we tend to disagree is Star Trek Picard, which they hated, absolutely hated, because because the main MacGuffin is a female character who is an android, a kind of android descendant of Lieutenant Commander Data. And because she's built along the same lines as Data, quite literally, she is smarter than all the other humans around her, and stronger and faster, and that these same guys, when they were kids, had no problem with that when it was Data. But when it's a girl, when it's a young woman, they do have a problem with that. And I knew that about their reactions to Picard before I even saw the show. But now I have seen Star Trek Picard, and their criticisms are completely wrong. There is nothing going on in Star Trek Picard that is anything like what's going on in Star Trek Discovery. Not at all. They are apples and oranges. I I would be happy to have another season of Star Trek Picard. I thought it was amazingly thoughtful, just amazingly well done. As a meditation on what is and isn't old school, real Star Trek. I thought, as a meditation, coming at that from a dozen different angles, it was just terrific. It was a Star Trek that we have not seen, and I loved it. So, long answer, sorry. Let's see here. Joe Buckley says, when I was a boy in 1950s and 60s, I read Ian Fleming and Mad magazine. I looked down on comic books. I still cannot understand their appeal. What is wrong with me? There's nothing necessarily wrong with you. You just allowed yourself to be a little close-minded, that's all. Believe me, if I can understand the appeal of comics, then you can. Comics is no longer a niche thing. There are plenty of examples out there that if you go into them with an open mind, you will love what you read. You just have to, as with anything, you just have to find your avenue of entry. You have to find the way in. Like, for instance, if you grew up reading Ian Fleming and Mad magazine, you may have grown up watching the TV show Batman. If that's the case, then you are already familiar. Even if you don't read comics, you're already familiar with the basic mythos of Batman. So read Frank Miller's Batman Year One. It will work on you. If you go into it with an open mind and you don't need any of it explained to you, and when it comes to the mythos of Batman, if you know the mythos, you won't need it explained to you, then it will work on you. It's just a question of entry. That's all. How are we doing for time? 21 minutes. Okay. Let's see here. Candy asks, I hope you do not mind my reposting my questions from a previous video. I would still like to learn. Oh, no, I don't mind that at all. And I should have prefaced this video by saying I ported these questions over, and I have not been feeling very good for the last week or so, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I may have missed your question. I may have blocked it out. If that's true, in this case, as in all cases, feel free to ask it again. We're going to hit another one of these Q&As in a matter of days. Question number 1. How to assess the quality of editions of classic works in terms of translator, critical apparatus, etc.? Well, it's not self-evident. It takes a bit of work, and it takes a bit of comparison as well. With translations, I say if you are a monoglot, if you don't know any languages but your own, then you don't really have to worry, I think, about the technical accuracy of the translation of any work that you're reading. What you have to worry about is how effective it is for you as a reader in the target language, in English, let's say, in this case. So, like for instance, with Greek and Roman classics, my advice has always been find a bunch of translations. Either it used to be at the library, now I don't know how many libraries are open, but find a row of them, samples online or something like that. Try a bunch of translations of the same work, and pick the one that you like reading the most. The key is to get the reading done first. You can analyze how close the author is to the original language much later on down the line. And same thing with critical apparatus. Does it feel complete? Does it answer all your questions? That's the way to assess it. Number 2, how to read faster. For example, stop sub-vocalizing. Well, my advice on reading faster is always the same, and it's not very satisfying because it's not a magic pill. The 2 sure ways to read faster are, number 1, to concentrate completely on reading. So no favorite cookie, no favorite tea, no just perfect nook, no nothing like that, no mood setting music, no nothing like that. Just concentrate completely on reading, especially no phone, no iPad, no pings and notices coming from everywhere. That's number 1. And number 2 is don't sub-vocalize, which is when you are sounding out the words of what you're reading in your head, even though you're not saying them out loud, you're still yoking yourself to how slow you read with your mouth. And your brain doesn't need that. Plenty of times during any given day, you read plenty of stuff without sub-vocalizing it. It's just when you see a block of text, some people are in the habit, lifelong habit, of sub-vocalizing it, reading it to themselves. And it's just a habit. It's not hardwired into your brain. You can change that habit. It takes work, but you can do it. And once you stop sub-vocalizing, your reading speed will increase 3 or 4 times. It'll go through the roof. And it can be discouraging, because if you've been sub-vocalizing your whole life, it's going to take time to reprogram that habit. But you can do it. Question number 3, your experience learning Latin and ancient Greek, as well as tips for self-learners. Self-learning ancient Greek is almost impossible, I would say. You probably need an instruction or two for that. Same thing with Latin. Latin is a little bit more compartmentalized. And I'd be willing to bet that there are basic tutorials on YouTube. I've never looked, but I bet there are. I would say don't go it alone. Certainly don't go it alone in silence. Find a channel. Find a free tutorial. It's possible to do. And question number 4, your thoughts on Barbara Cartland, as well as the historical accuracy of her books. Her books tend to be very, very largely historically accurate. She plays fast and loose, and she's a cheeseball writer, but very enjoyable. I've never read a book of hers that I didn't like. Although she is one of those authors where I haven't read them all. Not at all, not even close. And then, let's see here. Oh, well, let's do one more. Luke and Jennifer Higgins say, let's see here. Question number 1. Who do you think was our best read president? John Quincy Adams. And who was the best world leader? That's such a difficult question. That is such a difficult question. It depends so much, as I've said many times, it depends so much on intangibles. There is a way. I know there are a number of people who are alive today who will recoil at this idea. And there are also a number of people who are dead who died on his watch who would otherwise recoil at the idea. But I think in some ways, judged by those intangibles, which is standing on the world stage, relationships on the world stage, it's possible that Ronald Reagan would rank very highly as a world leader. It's possible. But there'd be other candidates as well. Of course, when you talk about United States president as a world leader, you're really talking about a fairly recent phenomenon. At least as I view recent. But anyway, question number 2. I enjoyed Peter Hopkirk's The Great Game. Can you recommend any other books featuring espionage in the Victorian era? There are quite a few. Some of them that I've liked. I could make private recommendations. I kind of don't like to do private recommendations on these Q&As. And question number 3. Amelia would like to know what your and Frida's favorite holidays are. Every day is a holiday for Frida. She doesn't wear any clothes, and her every need is taken care of by her captive human. For me, there are only 2 holidays that mean anything: the 4th of July and New Year's. The others are fun to watch, but not to observe. And then we'll stop there and we'll move on. I don't know how many of these I can do. We'll see how close we get. I will wrap this up and I'll be right back.